everybody. Welcome to this Friday edition of the Secret Mailbag. I'm Autumn Stringham, and I've got a really great question here that I'm going to try to talk through from the heart. So right here is the message, and it's a long one. I'm going to summarize it really quick and then get into my answer. This is a woman I've never met, actually. She just came through a message request on Messenger, and she's been using, or her daughter has been using, my father's EMPowerplus formulation for about 6 years. She's asking about my bipolar experience with the supplement, and talks about how her 27-year-old daughter started using it, and 6 years ago did awesome. She actually transitioned off of all of her medication, and she's been like really good for quite some time. She says, I'll catch up here. Okay, the meds they had her on were terrible, and she sank into a very deep depression, and eventually mom became desperate to try something different. So that's when they discovered my book. And read it and slowly weaned off of the medications, and they were working with a support line and doing all of that kind of stuff. She recently had a manic episode and ended up back in the hospital. And so now she's back on medication. Thank heaven it's working. And then the question, did you ever have a relapse once you went off medication and strictly on supplements? She's so discouraged right now, and mom feels somewhat helpless to guide her. She says, her head is saying, see, didn't work. Her heart is telling her otherwise. So without identifying these people, I'm going to speak directly to them. We're going to call them mom and daughter. All right, mom. Mom, I think your heart is guiding you right. I think that you know that she did better than she had done in a long time. But the question is, what changed? Well, here are the facts. Medications have medication responses, right? Sedatives sedate, uppers up, downers down, and sometimes they stop working too. I went through 13 medications and different combinations over several years and multiple hospitalizations, and frankly, I wasn't getting any better. So there's no guarantee, whatever modality you're choosing, there's no guarantee that it's going to be steady and stable all the time. Nutrition doesn't stop working, but there are a lot of factors. So when I say nutrition doesn't stop working, I mean calcium's always going to do what calcium does. Vitamin B is always going to be vitamin B. But there are so many factors in keeping someone stable, especially when we're talking about mood stuff and mania in particular. My goodness, there are so many ways to get into a mania. So without asking a whole lot of questions, I think I'm just going to throw out what I would normally say in a conversation. I would be asking about, well, first I'll give you an example. So yes, I have had relapses. Have I ever ended up back in the hospital? No, I didn't. Could I have? Probably. If my husband was prepared or scared of me, he might have put me back. But I have not ended up back in the hospital. I do recall a couple of times when I wished I was back in the hospital, and now I'm glad I didn't. So, the point here is people have to stay safe. You just have to be safe, and you got to do what works for you every minute. I'll give you some examples of times when I have had relapses. Bear in mind, we're talking since 1996, so I'm on year 24 at this point. I've had a lot of life in that time. The very first time that I had an increase in symptoms that really scared me and really scared my doctor was after a major sinus infection. So spring allergies crept up. I did not handle it well that year, and I got a major sinus infection. And I was back to really strange behaviors. A lot of my repetitive touching, ranting, pacing, flapping. I used to do this thing, I'd flap and beat myself in the face. I actually went there, and I had been really stable for about a year, and all of a sudden this cropped up. And it was my doctor who identified what I needed to do. He said, "Wait a second, we've had you on a huge amount of antibiotics. Do you have diarrhea?" And he went through this whole questioning thing with me. And then he said, "I think it's inhibiting the absorption of those minerals you're taking. I want you to double up." So he sent me home and told me to double up my dosage of what eventually became the EMPowerplus formulation. Uh, and we all learned something because I got stable and I did better, recognizing that there was outside factors that could inhibit absorption of nutrition in ways that I wasn't normally used to. So I became really aware of antibiotic use. There are other things that we can do and eat that will inhibit the use of minerals. There was a time during a little kind of a case study that we were doing in the late 90s when we were my dad and his friend, they were trying to kind of perfect the formulation and boil it all down, figure out, like, go from like 96 ingredients to 30 something, and they were trying to figure out what's active, get the combination correct. And I became a little guinea pig and tried using uh, different combinations of minerals, and actually became symptomatic when they went to one really big extreme. And I took some um, zinc and some chromium and stuff, like, out of balance, and it threw me into some really interesting symptoms. Not everything I had experienced, but pretty disturbing, pretty bothersome symptoms. So it's a delicate balance, and the brain is a delicate organ. Another time that I have had a relapse, and this time it was just like a really severe depression. I had massive blood loss with my second daughter, so third baby, um, back in 2001. And there was something going on with the Canadian blood supply at the time, and I was just stubborn. And I just said, "There's no way I'm doing a transfusion. I'm going to ride this out." Probably a big mistake, because in the time it took for me to rebuild from a massive blood loss during a major problem that happened during labor, um, it just played me out, and I went into a major depression. I used a lot of extra supplementation to rebuild my blood and to get back to feeling normal again. But they said that that's normal, that people will go through a major depression with blood loss like that. So it took me, I don't know, longer than normal to get back to feeling good and feeling strong and stable. Um, yeah, and about 12 years ago, we immigrated to the United States. And boy, that was a stressful process. Sold the house too early, had to live in the camper trailer waiting for my papers, and then had to take a bunch of immunization shots and kind of like loading up, because all Americans are completely immunized at all times. So we needed to cross the border. Anyway, super stressful on my body, super stressful all around. And it was a prolonged stress. And I came down here, and we arrived in the dead of winter. Spring allergies hit, and it was new allergies, and worse than I'd ever experienced in my life. And I don't know, there's something about those histamine levels. You can do your research on that one, because they use antihistamines as psych meds sometimes for people. And I had to relearn how to be stable in the spring. So I did go through a mania then, and it was ugly, really ugly. So it took me a couple of years to realize how sensitive I am to histamine. Do you see that there's so many factors that it could be? This is one of those things where I would love to just do a workshop and just get everybody to pile in small groups, and we can really talk about our medical histories and, like, what are the things that trigger, and as we talk to each other, kind of like vet those things out, because I think those are best discovered in group discussions. You learn from each other and you kind of figure each other out, and I've had the most epiphanies on these kinds of things by talking to other people who have been long-term users of the supplements. When you're out there on your own and you think it's just supposed to be like solid steady sailing at all times, it can be really disappointing. And I think that there are some lessons that we can learn from each other, especially long-term participants, helping those who are brand new to just kind of see that, these are the factors in digestion, and these are the factors in just kind of maintaining health. And then it really helps to be able to um, figure those things out together. So watch for something like that. I am going to be putting together a series of different workshops, and I think that we will break into smaller groups and really discuss needs particularly. As far as trying to figure it out, if I was on the phone with you, I would say, what happened in the last 6 months? Like, let's go back in the last 6 months. Did she reduce her dose? Did she add birth control? Was there a major change in diet? Did she suddenly lose a bunch of weight? Go keto or something like that? Because all of these things affect. Is she taking lightning sticks, or is she taking the EMPowerplus capsules? And if so, does she have a gut problem that might be inhibiting digestion of the capsules? Maybe she needs to switch to some lightning sticks so that it's just getting straight into her bloodstream. What are some other things I would be asking? Oh yeah, I'd be talking allergies, anxieties, different stresses, and just like really look at, like, dial back and look at the whole picture and imagine all of the possible scenarios for a long-term effect on digestion and absorption. And actually, wait, let me just double check this. It is capsules. Okay, so she's taking capsules. Works amazing for some people. Worked great for me. When I went to lightning sticks, it took me to a whole new level of stability because I can skip my nasty gut. And I have just, ever since I was a baby, had problems with my gut. I do my best, but it's not perfect. And getting that EMPowerplus directly into the bloodstream really does help. So I use some capsules because they're like comfort food for me and I love them. And I use mostly lightning sticks now, and I get a much better response from that. If you have any questions, if you're watching this video and you've had this question before, or maybe you've had an experience with a relapse and then being able to get back on or never getting back on, let's talk about it and share your experiences with each other. And then watch for those workshops coming up. I'm just figuring out some technology and how to get people put into groups in more effective ways. And we're going to have a lot of fun with that in the future. Okay, thanks for your questions in the secret mailbag. I love them. I'm still working on reaching out to every person that's in this group individually. So watch for your messenger messages. If we're not friends on Facebook, friend me now so I can message you later, and we'll all be in contact. Okay, have a great night. Bye-bye.